If you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a Durango.
Welcome back to HIVEMIND Unlimited.
And welcome to another episode of our movie segment, How Did It Age? Where we watch older movies and reevaluate them with modern context. Today's movie is Dodgeball.
Dodgeball, the underdog story.
A true underdog story.
True underdog story. That's exactly what it is.
It came out in 2004, and it stars Vince Vaughn, Ben Stiller, Justin Long, and others.
And Ben Stiller's wife, Christine Taylor, the banker.
Oh, really?
That's Ben Stiller's wife.
Oh, Veach, right?
No.
I think her last name's Veach.
Her name's Christine Taylor.
In real life?
Yes.
That makes more sense.
Yep.
I think her name is Kate
in the movie.
Kate Veach.
Okay, let's get into some fun facts about this one.
Sorry about that.
It's all right. Keep it together.
Man.
Directed by Rawson Marshall Thurber.
Mm-hmm. The Thurber brothers.
Sounds like a president that sucked or something.
The Thurber babies.
This is an awesome story. He wrote this like in his last semester of film school, and he wrote this for Vince Vaughn and Ben Stiller.
Really?
And he sent dodgeballs with spray painted, like the title of the movie in stencil on it to like all the major movie studios.
No way. So this is like a true underdog story.
Yeah, and it somehow ended up on Ben Stiller's desk. It is like the stories from like the 50s where like you marched in and you like slammed the script down in front of Marilyn Monroe and she was like, "I love it, honey." And like then it just makes the movie.
This is like Big Sean freestyling for Kanye West and getting signed to good music.
So that is awesome. That shit like that doesn't happen anymore.
True.
It comes in that era of like they really hit every sports movie.
Yeah.
Like literally everyone. You had Semi-Pro and Ping Pong, Balls of Fury and Blades of Glory and Talladega Nights.
Yeah.
This is right in the mix of them. And it's one of the favorite cult classics of it. It made a ton of money. It made $168.4 million against a $20 million budget, which is a lot. It beat a Spielberg movie that weekend.
Oh.
Terminal, which was a total flop. Rawson went on to do We Are the Millers, which was kind of funny. And then Central Intelligence, which I've never seen, but hasn't really ever got back to the success of Dodgeball. And he was in the movie. Can you guess which character he was?
Was he the Las Vegas homophobe who threw the ice cream on him on the pirate?
Steve the Pirate.
Steve the Pirate?
Good guess.
Yeah. I didn't just read it off your doc. I knew it.
That is really,
Or I guessed it.
It's a spot on guess.
Fully the obnoxious Las Vegas homophobe. Is that what he was?
It's got a 6.7 on IMDb, 72% Rotten Tomatoes, and a 3.2 on letterboxd. And most surprisingly, Roger Ebert fucking loved it.
Really?
Gave it a 3 out of 4, and I don't even have a quote from him. Like, go read the review. It's like him being like, he's like fawning. He thinks it's so great.
I am very surprised by that. Almost as surprised as it having a 72% on Rotten Tomatoes.
That doesn't really surprise. This is a pretty beloved movie, and I know we'll get into our takes, and it didn't age particularly well for us. But I think it sits in the sports category, obviously, and its momentum is such a classic sports movie.
Yeah.
It is a true underdog thing. People sign up for the game that they'll never make it. You have the juggernaut, and then they play with all the tropes. You got the evil Germans and like, oh, I don't know. It like just works in such a familiar way where it really just like reads or views as a sports movie. So I feel like it's not even really judged as a comedy. It's like a sports movie with 600 one-liners.
I understand that. It has the structure of that where it's like, you know, the underdog team like almost wins and then loses at the last second, but then it's like, wait, actually it didn't lose. And then it does it even again. It has a few bait and switches.
And then he sells the company and then he gambles it. It's like, wow.
Right. Oh, yeah. I get that.
There's a satisfactory element to it that I feel like people over time just really come to appreciate. Like 90 minutes tight.
Yeah, and I'll get this out of the way now. I thought while I was watching it that I wish I had either a time machine where I could go back and be a child and watch this again.
Yeah.
Or I had a machine that made me really dumb so I could like it, because there are things that I wanted to like about it that just as an adult, I was like, oh man, I was laughing so hard at this.
Yeah, I have it. We always ask each other if we've seen it or not. And I have it down that this might have been the most like impactful comedy of my childhood. It was like this and Anchorman were like my two quotables that I like really adapted and like absorbed and watched 100 times.
See, I had only ever seen this movie, I think twice. like maybe 3 times. I
Yeah.
know I'd seen it, but I just like, it wasn't a big one for me
Yeah.
growing up. Me and my brother, I remember, liked it when we watched it the first time together. And then Anchorman's like that for me too. I never really got into it as a kid. And
Yeah.
I tried rewatching that before we did this series, like 2 weeks before. Part of why I came up with it.
Yeah.
And I hated that movie.
Yeah.
And it's just because I didn't see it as a kid.
Yeah.
This I liked a little bit more than that because I remember liking it.
And Vince Vaughn. This is really where I fell in love with Vince Vaughn, who I adore.
Yeah, I think he's a great comedic actor.
Some other weird things about this. This is, Ben Stiller's said this. This is a direct copy and paste of the character Tony Perkins Jr. that he plays in Heavyweights.
Oh, okay.
Where it's like Fat Camp.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember Heavyweights.
And he's like, you know, like shoves a cupcake in his pants and like has like this sick like fetish with food, but he's like so fit now. And like, it is literally the same character. And he copy and pasted it because he said he didn't think anyone saw it. And Heavyweights became like a real cult classic. Like we watched Heavyweights at camp. Like it was like a thing for like, I don't know, people like one generation above us. That was like a real cult classic comedy for. It's weird that was just lifted from there. And he said like, oh yeah, White and Tony are definitely like cousins. That's like, he's like, oh, they're related in my mystic character mind. I was like, fuck you, Ben Stiller. You just dragged the character over and just did the same one.
Yeah.
And then you got ESPN Ocho in here, which becomes like a real thing. In 2017, ESPNU started doing marathons every once in a while where they would show ping pong and darts.
Yeah,
and
like more odd sports.
Lawnmower racing. I remember watching that on there.
Yeah.
And so there are cultural things that like come from this movie that I feel like have real sticky staying power. But as we get into the meat and potatoes, which we can right now, I feel like it really leaves a lot of empty holes. Like upon rewatching, I was like pretty disappointed.
There are some lines that I remember and some that I didn't, that I picked up on this one that I did really like. One line that I still remember to this day, when they're trying to save average Joes and they need to come up with $50,000 before the Dodgeball idea comes up. One of the guys says, "We can sell blood and semen." And then there's like a pause and they're like, ugh. And then he's like, what? Not mixed together.
Yeah, I think it's Gordon that's like, oh.
Yeah.
That is a great line. There are a couple really iconic ones, like Balmy Blazer.
Is that originally from this?
Yes, because Blazer's on the team. They have Blazer.
Yeah, people say Balmy Blazer when you play basketball. Like,
yeah, it's like, that's like a real phrase now, which is crazy that we get that from this.
I thought that we were quoting something else.
No. Like if I want you to throw me the remote and you're on the other couch, I can say, "Balmy Blazer."
Yeah,
it's a great phrase that we get from this. You get a lot of good Ben Stiller ones. There's ones that I didn't remember. I love when he first meets Kate and she literally throws up in her mouth. And he's like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "Oh, I just vomited in my mouth a little bit." And he goes, "In some cultures, they only eat vomit."
And then he says, "I've never been over there. I read it in a book."
Yeah, I mean, his character's got some crazy delivery and some when he's talking to, I think it's when he's first talking to Vince Vaughn, he says, "Go ahead and make your jokes, jokey. Joke maker."
Jokey McJoke maker. Yeah.
That is like in scenes, I'll get to it, but when he confronts him after they win their first match, when they win their qualifier against the Girl Scouts or whatever, Vince Vaughn has one of my favorite lines in there right as he walks in and he goes, "Hey, White, Nazi camp skip arts," or didn't know Nazi camp got out early today. You guys decide to skip arts and crafts? And Ben Stiller just goes, "Yes." Doesn't deny it.
He's so like, Ben Stiller as a comedic actor is very, very good at being the guy who can't come up with anything to say.
Yeah.
Like he's not clever and he's like on the opposite side of someone who is clever.
Right. When he's the wild one. Because Vince Vaughn's character is really straight in this for the most part. He's just kind of like a do nothing.
Yeah. I think he's straight. Yeah. He's into the girl, right? He's into Kate Veach.
Yeah. He's into Kate Veach and he's trying to get that Kate Peach.
One of my favorite lines in this is when Vince Vaughn walks past Patches O'Houlihan, doesn't know it's him in the parking lot, and he goes, "Okay, crazy guy." And then Patches O'Houlihan says, "I ain't crazy, and I ain't a guy. I'm Patches O'Houlihan." I was like, what the... That line is so funny to me because I ain't crazy, and I ain't a guy. Yeah, it's wild.
Yeah, Rip Torn is like on 12 here. Like,
oh yeah,
and
I wish he was on 10.
Me too, because
Right.
I love the character.
Me too.
I love the washed up former dodgeball great who we actually get to see in his prime in the promo video.
Unrecognizable
Right.
from himself later.
Yeah.
It's almost like that doesn't have to be Patches O'Houlihan. That could be a crazy guy who says he's Patches O'Houlihan.
But it like works great when they get to the tournament and everything and everybody like knows and respects him. But he's like the great actor that's gone and become a recluse and then comes out of hiding to like train the new person.
Much
whatever.
like Cars.
Yeah.
With the
kind of a Hudson. Hudson character.
Yeah, for sure.
Some other Patches lines are like, is it necessary for me to drink my own urine? No, but it's sterile and I like the taste.
Yeah,
like,
people quote that to this day.
That one's great.
He does cross a few lines. He says some slurs in this movie.
He says the R slur about trying to fuck a doorknob when he's talking about how useful they are.
He says the D slur when he's talking about whether Kate is a lesbian or not. It's very weird.
He calls her like a muff muncher and, some stuff you don't want to hear.
Yeah, there's stuff like that aged very poorly.
One of his edgier ones that I like, though, is he's like, well, hell, son, you're about as useful as a cock-flavored lollipop. That one's good.
Yeah, that's funny.
Because that's not useful.
Right, the flavors.
Gay or not.
Right.
It doesn't matter. You don't want to open up a lollipop that you get from the bank, put it in your mouth, and it tastes like a cock. You don't want that.
Right.
It's not useful.
And if you do, that's okay.
Yes.
You're allowed. One of my favorite Ben Stiller lines in this entire movie is just, I love comedy that's like this, where it's someone who's not funny, trying, and it comes off so awkward.
Yeah.
Is where White Goodman is talking to Peter and he's like trying to convince him to kind of like, sell the game, lose the game, and like whatever. He's going to give him a bunch of money, the whole thing. And he's kind of explaining his role within it. He's like, there's so much pressure, like they all rely on you. And then he's like, you're their Fonzie, Pete. Like so awkward and so funny.
I love the Ben Stiller line when he's like he's making the offer to Vince Vaughn in the hotel room. And he's like, have you ever seen $100,000? And he like opens the case and he goes, I'm sorry, it doesn't look the same as it does in the movies. It's because it's just like a stack of bills. It's like pretty anticlimactic. And Vince is like, that line is great. I forgot about that line. I also forgot about when like Justin Long runs into cheerleader girl in the Vegas hotel and her boyfriend's being like a dick. As they're walking away, Justin's teammate is like, don't worry about him, man. And then the other person goes, he's probably going to fall off that roller coaster and break every bone in his body. And you're like, that's an insane thing to say. And the callback at the end is like Justin Long has to compete in the cheerleading competition because the girl's like, he fell off the roller coaster and he broke every bone in his body. It's like a funny prophetic line. That's
such like a 2000s comedy trope that I feel like is born out of that 90s, the State, Wet Hot American Summer. It's all like they take like a phrase that you would just say and it's kind of absurdist and then they make it happen, like bringing it to life. And I feel like a lot of that comedy hasn't aged super well, but at the time it was very funny, especially to a younger audience.
And then we have all the lines of fucking Cotton and Pepper who are like, those remain to me probably the funniest characters in this. They cross some lines at some point, obviously. I mean, like so many of the teams are like racist caricatures.
Oh, we'll get into that in scenes. Like that was one of my big problems with the movie is that I did not remember how obviously every team was based on a stereotype. Like, oh my gosh.
Which like, they're not trying to get around it. That is the joke there. But like just doesn't age that well. But my favorite from Cotton at the very end when it goes into sudden death and Vince Vaughn puts on Patch's scarf to cover his eyes. He says, I have been to the Great Wall of China and I have seen the pyramids of Egypt and I've witnessed a grown man satisfy a camel, but I've never seen anything like this. You'd say this as like a sports Bob Costas would be like, we've seen it all tonight, folks, and I've seen the pyramids of Egypt, but I've never seen anything like that. But to slip, I've seen a grown man satisfy a camel into it. It got me.
Because even like a sports announcer might be like, I saw Kirk Gibson's home run and tonight might top it, you know, like that type of thing. But yeah, it's good absurdity. It's like exaggeration. My favorite announcer line comes from Jason Bateman. We haven't even talked about it. That's Jason Bateman doing this.
Pepper, baby.
And it's like so early.
He's got a neck tat.
Yeah, he has a neck tat. He has spiky hair.
It's
like
so early where he can play like the stoner kid.
I was talking about this with Hunter, and I was like, I didn't know who Jason Bateman was when I watched this movie.
No
he
idea.
was just the announcer.
Might be my favorite role he's ever done too. I'm not a Bateman guy.
I like him. I like him quite a bit, but like this is just very funny to see him younger and like not the big famous actor in the movie. Right when they're announcing that Average Joe's is going to forfeit because they don't have enough players, Cotton says all of that, and then Jason Bateman responds and says, "It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him."
He like swivels and like leans over. He's like, "Bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for him."
Yeah, I love that line so much because it just they're perfect, a perfect announcer pair.
Yeah,
because you get the kind of like boisterous, more traditional announcer stuff from Cotton, but like a little bit of absurdity.
Right.
And then Pepper is just like a dumbass who doesn't understand. Like he even says when he puts on the blindfold, he's like, "It's gonna be tough for him to see Cotton."
I was just
like,
about to say that. He's just constantly pointing out the obvious.
Yeah.
I love when Ben Stiller gets someone out, like when he like leans Michelle over, peekaboo, and throws it, and Cotton's like, White Goodman with his patented peekaboo out right there, as if he's been doing it for like years.
Yeah, this
is
is
not
like,
even a move. He just like bends someone over and goes, peekaboo, and throws a ball.
Right. And it's also funny because they joined the dodgeball tournament specifically to take down Average Joe's. So it's like they're a new dodgeball
No one knows
team.
them. Yeah.
And it's hilarious that they're the juggernauts in this, as if to suggest that all of these other teams that have been competing suck.
Yeah.
And the two best teams are the two teams who entered for the first time this year. It's like
It's unbelievable.
very funny.
Yeah. In the opening infomercial for Globo Gym, Ben Stiller's talking about how being fat is like a disease, and he's like baldness or necrophilia. It's like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
It almost like makes you think that he's constantly like implying how sick he is behind the scenes. Obviously, you get glimpses of it. He shoves a pizza in his pants and he has a penis pump and he's doing all this nasty shit.
Right.
But like they always are hinting at like White is really fucked up.
Oh, yeah.
Like gross. sick man with sick thoughts.
I believe dudes like him should die.
Yeah.
A lot of scenes in this movie aged really poorly. Stuff I just did
I disagree.
Yeah, I don't think you do.
I don't.
You're right. One is the instructional video that they play to teach them how to play dodgeball.
Don't say
It's funny, but it's crazy.
It's crazy, but that's like one of the funniest scenes in the movie.
It's like I said, it is funny. I just did not remember that there's this whole element where the kid who's learning how to play dodgeball is in a Chinese opium den where they came up with dodgeball. That's where it was invented.
Opium.
I know.
He comes back to him and he goes, he's choking on opium.
It's a kid.
It's hilarious.
It is funny, but it's just like the way that it deals with other cultures in this movie overall is very tasteless.
But that's an instructional video like from the 50s.
Yeah.
And so I think it's like making a joke about how people in the 50s viewed other cultures as well. Like granted, I know in the modern context of this film too, they make a bunch of racist caricatures, but I think that's what lets it get away. It's in black and white. He's like painting a fence. He's like Tom Sawyer in the beginning. I don't know. I think there are a lot of bad scenes in this. To me, the one scene that I absolutely hated was like Vince Vaughn's, Peter LaFleur's first meeting of Kate. Like when he finds her in there, he's like, says something nasty. After that, says something nasty again. And he's just like the most vulgar, nasty stuff. That's like, it's not even like done in a comedic way. He's just supposed to be like
it's almost like he is like so dejected that he's just willing to treat a woman poorly. Like he's not like pleased with himself for doing it the way that Vince Vaughn can be.
But he does think he has like some sort of allure
later. But that first scene is weird. It's like very odd and
very strange.
And then like she says she's a lawyer, and then he's like, "What kind of law?" And she's like, "Mostly sexual harassment." Like to kind of like ward him off.
Right.
But I'll just get into my broad thing about the misogyny of this movie. Is generally that it's like the lesser of two evils situation. Like Vince Vaughn is like a creep and a misogynist in this movie, and being very, very forward. And like the way that she reacts to him doing all of this versus White Goodman, who's more overtly like, "I want to mate with you." Like he's like his typical over the top creepy, like obviously a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Vince Vaughn is also a piece of shit the whole time, and she just eventually, like, he gives her a ticket for like a free back rub, and then he's like, if you're lucky, that'll turn into a full body massage, and she's like, oh, stop, like she's already like won over by it, and I'm like, she just likes the less creepy of two guys in this scenario, and I feel like that is just super an odd thing, and I know movies in the 2000s do this anyway. But generally, the way they handle women characters, so like dismissive. They're not like centered as having. They're not dynamic characters. Right. They're meant to be there to be like prizes for the men. Yeah. Or to make a stupid joke at.
But she does play on the team and get smoked in the face, and then has a girlfriend and gets a double makeout at the end. So that's pretty dynamic.
Yeah. After they suspect that she's so good at dodgeball, she must be a lesbian.
Yeah.
Then
she's bisexual. She tricks everyone. It's dynamic.
Right. But I don't think
she's bi and poly.
Yeah. No, I don't think we have to high five.
Every Vince Vaughn's dream. Am I right? Oh,
there's only one Vince Vaughn, but
I'm losing it, man.
He's a singular actor, but
yeah, it sucks.
And also very fat-phobic movie.
Fat-phobic, homophobia, and misogyny run rampant through this, and they are like kind of the three tracks of comedy in a lot of ways, and you kind of just bounce between those. Occasionally you fall short of one and end up somewhere in the middle, and the cadence and like the momentum of this as a sports movie does work, and you can kind of, some lines and scenes just end up being more absurd than any of those problematic kind of traits.
Yeah, I was just gonna bring up like Justin Long's scene doing the cheerleading thing at the beginning, and they bring like the girl who runs out is like a bigger woman, and then the whole thing is played for laughs of like he's never gonna be able to hold her, and she's like ha, 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 and then like she ends up like
falling on his
like
face.
Yeah, like her butt in his face. And it's like that's the whole joke there. I'm like, yeah. It's just 2000s stupid comedy that it feels very, very targeted and weird.
Gordon's mail order wife and that dynamic is kind of strange.
Yeah. And we touched on it, but every team in the dodgeball tournament is like a racist stereotype. There's like skills that kills, and they're like, they're the inner city champions. And they're like a bunch of dudes in sweatsuits dancing and like
have chains.
And it's spelled skills that kills. It's just like
you have the Germans who are like big beefcake Eastern European, if not resembling Nazis. Post-Nazi Germans who are like obsessed with David Hasselhoff, who is one of the great 3 cameos that is in this movie.
Oh yeah, I'll get to the cameo. I have a list there. The Asian guys playing in diapers and like doing it's very insensitive the entire way through and played for laughs. Like it's just doesn't have its bearings in that way. And I mean they have like the cop team and stuff, and I'm like shit like that, like the police department is an example of something that works that is not playing on stereotypes the same way.
A group of people that like you could just put in there.
And even like the Girl Scout team, they have like the girl who was on performance enhancing drugs, and they give her like a comically deep voice and like hair all over her arms, and
that did not age well at all.
No.
But I will say that them playing the Girl Scouts alone, just as a premise, I really did love that.
Right.
And like, I don't know if I even appreciated it that much when I was a kid, but that is just so funny that they like sign up for the regional qualifier. They show up and it's Troop 13 or whatever.
Right.
And just all the girls go out. And of course, they're like these vicious preteen teenage girls who are like destroying these grown men. I love that as like a little setup. God damn it, Bernice. I used to always say
that's like a line that everybody repeats. And now that I remember the context, I was like, shit. But what I wrote down about that, like the problematic aspects of this movie, is that it's a movie that tries to get away with racism, misogyny, homophobia, fat phobia by being the more virtuous version of it and body positive for the time. So like the way that Vince Vaughn's character contrasts with Ben Stiller's character is that he's like a gentler version of the same thing.
Yeah, you just want to come be healthy. I don't care what you do. We're just a gym that accepts everyone.
Yeah, I don't care what you look like or what you whatever. But then it's like still they very much play into the same tropes and themes. And so it's a very like tough pill to swallow watching it back for me, being like, it's weird how the good guys in 2000s comedies a lot of the time are just a bad guy who's not as bad as the worst guy you've ever heard of.
Yeah.
Because they've decided to make like this super over the top character be the villain here.
Yeah.
But basically my conclusion on that is that I think this movie's stupid jokes are less offensive than the things it tries to be earnest about.
Yeah, for sure.
Like it's trying to be earnestly body positive and like good guy and like rooting for the underdog and all those things. And I feel like it trips up on those things more than it does on these like stupid jokes you can kind of shrug off.
Yeah.
Like, of course they're offensive, but they're not to be taken super seriously.
Right, of course.
And the stuff that the movie wants you to take seriously, I feel like comes off very, has aged poorly.
Yeah.
That's what I'll say.
That being said, and I agree, there are some fucking laugh out loud scenes in this.
Yeah, totally.
It's remembered the way it is. It's quoted the way it is because it has some ridiculous scenes. Me personally, I love when the little kid hits the opium. Okay, we'll move on past that.
Right.
Playing the Girl Scouts, like I mentioned, meeting Patches in the parking lot. That scene of just like a crazy guy in a wheelchair, homeless looking dude coming up and being like, I'm going to teach you how to play dodgeball.
Yeah.
Awesome scene. Maybe my second favorite scene in the movie is a blip. It might as well have been a line, but nothing said. They're walking through. They've gone into the championship game. They've won the semifinals. And Gordy's like all excited. And he's like jubilant. And he's like, you really think we got a chance tomorrow? And Vince Vaughn's like, yeah, as long as we got Patches, we'll win. And the Luck of the Irish sign in the casino just falls and kills Patches instantly. And it like cuts to they're talking about it at like over beers later that night. And they're like, oh, I think that's how he would have wanted to go. And it's like, what? What do you mean that's how the Luck of the Irish sign in the casino, in the MGM Grand crashing on him? It's the craziest shit ever. Just really catches you off guard and it's super funny.
Yeah. One of my favorite scenes in the entire movie is when Steve the pirate starts to question whether he's a pirate.
Yeah.
And he like looks at himself in the mirror and he's like, whatever. But I love that he is in Las Vegas, walking down the Vegas Strip, and people are harassing him for being dressed like a pirate. And I'm like, of any place in the U.S. that you can be, that's the most acceptable
there are
place.
Literally pirate shows.
Yeah, like he says, go back to Treasure Island.
Right.
It's like,
that's a casino where people dress as pirates.
Probably wouldn't have to walk that far to get back there. It is hilarious to me that they decide to have him have that reckoning in Vegas.
I think it's funny.
Yeah,
like, it's definitely intentional.
I think it's intentional too, because if I saw someone dressed like a pirate in Vegas, I'd
flinch.
I'd be like, whatever.
If I saw someone dressed like a pirate in Chicago, I wouldn't flinch. I'd be like, there's enough water here, I guess. Gotta make a living somehow. My favorite scene of the whole movie, though, is like after they win the qualifier by default or by disqualification of the Girl Scouts. And they're just at the local bar. They're all having drinks. Kate and Peter are kind of, the juices are flowing. And this is when you meet the Globo Gym team. Yeah. They walk in. I already said the Nazi camp arts and crafts line. But the way that whole scene just like plays out, you get the introduction. You get laser, blazer, taser, and then you get Slachova, Chekanovic, whatever. The crazy like Romanian girl's name. Her and Owen locking eyes there. Yeah. And like you feel the tension there, which is hilarious. That scene just plays out so funny. And it has this great back and forth between Vince and Ben Stiller. And Ben Stiller's just like, it's about to get messy. And he hits that waitress who has like a dillion things on the tray, so many drinks, and it spills all over Gordon and Owen, like the two little like weakest guys of the group. Yeah. And they just get covered. She like falls on the table. Just the whole scene is so perfect because it really just shows like White trying to be this tough guy who can only surround himself with these big muscly freaks. Yeah. Vince Vaughn being like pretty level-headed and not even really... Ben Stiller's like arguing with himself because he can't really have wit. And Vince Vaughn will like question him and be like, yeah. And he just ends up being so stiff during it. Absolutely love that scene.
I want to mention that I just completely forgot about this when I was talking about problematic. His name is White Goodman.
White Goodman.
White Goodman. And I was like, I know that that's not like a predominant character trait of him is that he's like a racist guy. Right. But it's just so like crazy that that's the name of the bad character.
White Goodman.
White Goodman.
Is the villain, yeah.
Maybe it is intentional because it plays into the idea of like the big corporate company coming in, taking down the little guys, But it was just, it struck me this time. Yeah. I've always just like accepted that. Like, that's his name, White Goodman.
Yeah, because White to me is like a funny rich guy's name.
Right. And it could just be that, but I read into it this time being like, is he White Goodman? plan to be like, you know.
Last two scenes I want to shout out are when they first get to Vegas and they have the wardrobe mishap. They get the other team's jerseys. They get the Dominatrix team's jerseys.
Yeah.
I kind of like that.
Yeah, that doesn't do anything for me.
I think it's funny that they decide to wear all the accessories. It's not like, oh, we're stuck with these. We're stuck with these, and like we have to be matching. We could all just wear the black Speedos. Like we all have to be matching. They could all just wear the bare minimum. But like Vince Vaughn comes out in the choker that says daddy. Owen has like the bite gag in. Like they go all out for it. For whatever reason.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of funny. And then Owen, again, another locker room scene, is when Steve decides he has his reckoning and he becomes a normal guy and he disappears and they're waiting for the finals and Steve and Peter aren't there. One of Owen's teammates is like explaining to him, he's like, Peter's not here and neither is like Steve. And he's like, who's Steve? And he's like, Steve the pirate. And he's like, Steve the pirate?
He's like, the guy who dresses like a pirate.
He's like, there's a guy. He gets like concerned. He's like, there's a guy in the team that dresses like a pirate. Yeah. It's like the fact that they just write in that Owen forgets Steve is like just such a funny little detail.
And even funnier than that is they cut away to another scene and they come back and it's just the middle of them still explaining. They're like, dude, his name's Steve. He dresses like a pirate. And he's like, dude, not ringing a bell. Like, I don't know, whatever. And then he shows up at the end dressed like a normal guy. Yeah. And he goes, oh, Steve the pirate's here.
Yeah, they like look at each other like, what? They're all like really airheaded in their own weird way.
Yeah, totally. I'll quickly touch on the cameos. The Lance Armstrong cameo is crazy.
It's really good.
It has aged so weird considering.
Yeah, but
all of his shit, but
his shit that's written in is really funny.
Vince Vaughn is sitting at the bar
about to leave,
drinking, he's about to leave, and then he's like, Peter LaFleur? And he's like, Lance Armstrong? And he's like, dude, I'm a big fan of you. I've been watching ESPN 8, The Ocho. He's like, I've been watching The Ocho.
Yeah.
8. He like says the channel name. It's so funny. And he's like, yeah, I've been keeping up. He's like, good luck in the final match. I think it's about to start, right? You're going to miss it. And then he's like, I might not go or whatever. And then he just goes into this whole rant about never giving up. And then he's like, you know, when I was diagnosed with brain, lung, and testicular cancer, all at the same time, I didn't give up. So, what life-threatening disease are you suffering from? He like calls him out, and he's like, whatever. But
he's like, I'm sure you have your good reason. You won't regret this the rest of your life.
Yeah, and walks away. And that whole scene, by the way, is crazy. Okay. This is the what we're supposed to believe in this movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Peter gets offered $100,000 to lose the final match and give him Average Joe's.
Yeah.
Because they're gonna win $50,000, whatever. Right. The whole thing. He's like, I'll give you $100,000. You can go do whatever you want with the money. Yeah. And it kind of leaves you on the cliffhanger. You don't know whether he's accepted that money or not. Then you see him drinking. Lance Armstrong, ready to leave. He's not showing up for the final match. Yeah. It seems like Lance Armstrong confronts him, whole thing. Then he shows up super late as they're forfeiting and says, oh, don't worry, I have a plan. Then they say, sorry, you already forfeited. It's over. And then they bring up the rules thing and blah, blah, blah.
The committee.
The committee, by the way, has Chuck Norris on
obviously.
it. Yeah, and he does just a thumbs up.
Thanks, Chuck Norris. That's like such an early 2000s, just like, let's have no dialogue for Chuck Norris. Let's just have him play a role.
Well, he does say, thank you, Peter.
Yeah, thank you, Peter.
So then what happens is, they get to play the match, they play it, and then White Goodman is like, doesn't matter, you already signed the rights over to Average Joe's to me last night, blah, blah, blah. Whole thing. Then he unveils this whole plan where he took the $100,000, put it on Average Joe's to win the game, which the
50-1.
The odds were 50-1, which they established earlier.
It's like it's a good establishing shot. He's like drinking at the bar, and you can hear it on like the Ocho. It's like, yep, Average Joe's a massive underdog in the championship game here today. We're looking at 50-1 underdogs, and then Lance kind of walks up.
Right. But then, like, the whole thing to me is so weird that then he's like, oh, that's $5 million. Yep. They play on Owen being bad at math because he says that's
whatever,
$50,000 or whatever, whole thing. And then he talks about how he's purchasing a controlling stake in Globo Gym, which is a public company, so he can do that, which then now that means he owns Average Joe's again. Whatever. he takes the $100,000, isn't going to show up to the final match,
Right.
and is betting on them to win it. Like,
Lance convinces him to go compete, and I think he places the bet along the way.
okay, that makes sense, I guess, but it's just so strange to me. Like,
I kind of like it because when he's first at Globo Gym in like the first quarter of the movie, the first chapter of this beautiful film, if you will,
first act.
Ben like slips out like, your gym isn't worth shit. You're in debt. I'm gonna buy it for whatever crumbs. Globo Gym's a $4.5 million company. He like brags about a specific number.
Yeah.
You get the 50-1 on the TV. Lance convinces him, and it kind of just like, Peter is like dumb, but he has this suaveness and he is smart. Like there's something about his character that's like just obviously smarter than Ben Stiller's character, but like he knows how much the gym's worth. And he's like, fuck, I already sold it. Here's what I can do to fucking turn the whole tables on this thing. We kind of already talked about it.
Yeah, I just they don't really make this kind of movie anymore.
They don't. And this like kind of ends with, what was the last one? Was like Balls of Fury like the last one, I feel like, of these like sports. Because then after this, you have these like 30-something losers who like they're trying to make something out of their life, like late adolescence thing. And then you just get stoner movies after this.
Yeah, you get like Pineapple Express, and then
the type of guy it kind of changes after this. You don't get like the failed professional trying to make it again. You kind of just get high loser trying to fuck. Like, it really does. There's like a shift at some point. They're like, oh, we can't do sports and all that. We that well is dry.
And a lot of these guys also end up kind of trying their hand at like rom-coms or serious acting for a minute, you know, and some of them successful, some of them not, like whatever.
Obviously Vince Vaughn, very successful.
Right. But comedy, just like the comedy blockbuster changed a lot in 2010.
And then it died forever.
I think they're bringing it back personally.
For sure,
I feel like there's some movies that are going to be coming out over the next couple of years that are going to be like doing this.
Mudang versus Kong, and it's a 30-second short film where King Kong steps on Mudang.
That's not a movie, and it's not really even in the genre we're talking about.
It steps and slips on Mudang like a banana peel, and Kong goes plat.
I don't think that's
funny.
Okay.
That's funny.
Sure. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, this movie, it wouldn't even come out today, but I think it could be executed with a sharper blade for sure.
Yeah.
Because like absurdist stuff that we love from this era, like it makes me think of Wet Hot American Summer, or like even Heavyweights, which I know is also camp setting, but those are just absurd for absurdity's sake and make these like children adults. They're like these adults that have the traits of like really dumb kids.
Yeah.
Also exist with kids. There's like a healthy ecosystem of comedy there instead of this where you're like trying to make, I hate the infusion of a love interest, really like a genuine one.
Yeah.
That always falls flat for me. And then this is like Vince Vaughn trying to be like, he's like the cool guy who hangs out with the band geeks who will stand up to the jock. And all that trope is just kind of like, ugh.
It's an accurate line to draw, though, about Wet Hot American Summer because Ben Stiller ended up producing a lot of the stuff that kind of came out of that camp for a second. Like that show Burning Love, which was just like a parody of dating shows, was produced by Ben Stiller, had Ben Stiller, Jennifer Aniston, and like Ken Marino and all the state guys were kind of in it. Yeah. And like he liked working with them, and you can see it seep into his comedy the further he gets in the 2000s, you know.
Kevin James is Peter LaFleur, and like Nick Cage, but it's Nick Cage's long legs, but he's white good now.
Oh, and
he's like a ripped long legs.
Kevin James makes sense, but the other one is...
He's like a muscly long legs.
Okay.
And he's like a satanic gym owner.
Okay. You hate the recast section now. It's like
most
every
of the time.
Yeah,
I get pissed.
Yeah. I wrote, Michael Cera as Justin Long would actually make this movie better. And if you really want to kick it up a notch, I think Jennifer Aniston would have been a great Kate Veach.
That's great. That's a really good one.
Thanks.
Yeah, Michael Cera is a little fucking cheerleader.
Because like Justin Long, outside of like the stuff that happened extracurricularly with the guy, it's like he's fine as this character in this movie, but I think it would benefit from a more awkward...
Yeah.
You know, like he is awkward in certain ways.
Yeah, but he's like quirked up.
Yeah.
He's like,
yeah, he's like anxious and mutters. But instead of being like, I guess I'll do the cheerleading.
Yeah.
Like, you know, like Michael Cera would have just been like a little bit more of a baked in character.
Justin Long did receive like upwards of 4 concussions while filming this. That scene where he's like trying to catch the ball and they're just hitting him with the jug machine over and over again. They didn't let him drive home after set like 3 days in a row because like they gave him serious concussions.
Yeah, you said that you think Justin Long might have CTE.
I think he said that. I think he's on record saying he might have CTE from Dodgeball, which to me is awesome because that's real work. You know?
Yeah.
You went on set and you said, all right, how many more do you need? And Marshall Thurber Rawson III, just another one. Hit him again. Hit him. He just got drilled. And then they said, we need someone to drive Justin home. He doesn't remember his kids' names.
Yeah, his dedication, you know?
That's pretty awesome. Theodore Shapiro did the soundtrack here.
He's 6'3", right?
Yeah, I looked up his IMDb. It said Theodore Shapiro, 6'3", and then all the movies he did. I said, wait a minute. Why did I need to know this guy? I feel like he
wants people to know.
Someone who's 6'3" wants you to know.
He's like, I'm not just a music supervisor. I'm tall.
I'm fucking tall as shit.
Yeah.
Baddies, come and get it.
Yeah. This soundtrack doesn't matter really.
No, there's not like, and I think it really would have benefited from more like, it's set in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
It's like set
in 1993.
Yeah, like if it would have had some music of the
why
time,
is it set in 1993?
There's no good reason.
It doesn't make any sense.
Zero good reason.
Okay, there's no
Zero.
Yeah. Why is Lance Armstrong? Wait a second.
He did not win.
I think we just poked a big hole in this
Yeah.
movie. It says it starts in 1993. Lance Armstrong comes up and he's like, oh shit, it's Lance Armstrong.
And he won 5 Tour de France's already post-cancer.
There were no
What the
gyms
hell?
like this either.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't get it.
Huge hole. Would have benefited from some like actual songs that are like more recognizable, or like even some corny an Eye of the Tiger moment.
It is "We Will Rock You" when they sing it.
Yeah.
but they do the boom boom. Tss.
Yeah. But like an Eye of the Tiger Rocky moment or something like that, like a classic sports movie song. We Will Rock You is a decent poll, but I think it could have used a genuine soundtrack here. This guy, Theodore Shapiro, did all the music for like Tropic Thunder and Wet Hot American Summer, aforementioned, and a bunch of other comedies and 13 Going on 30 and stuff. But it works. It's effective. It doesn't like it doesn't get across too much emotion. It's just
Yeah,
like,
I didn't even notice it really.
Yeah, it's really like it's the sleepiest one we've had yet in soundtrack. For sure.
Only in a way that was like, this is what movies were like when I was a kid.
Yeah. When I was a child.
No.
Yeah.
Don't leave me.
I'm good now. I'm good.
Oh, sorry.
That's a great way to put it. I wrote not if I didn't have to. If someone was like, could you recommend me a Vince Vaughn movie from 2004? I'd be like, fuck, what else was he in? And I'd be like, yeah. And then I'd be like, Dodgeball, I guess.
Yeah.
You'd have to quarter me to recommend this.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be like, dude, if you haven't seen this, you
never.
gotta go back. You missed out on Dodgeball? Bro, buckle up for 92 minutes of rock and roll fun. Like, I don't know. All right, I gave this 2.5 stars and I said, love you, Vince, but even you couldn't save this one from aging. Because I do feel like, obviously it was super successful in its day, but it aged like, oh, young cheese getting old or something. Hashtag save and racism. Hashtag love you, mom. Hashtag ALS challenge accepted.
It's the ice bucket challenge.
Yep. That's me saying ALS challenge accepted, and I inject it into me.
Yeah, I gave it 2.5 stars as well, and I just put not anymore. That's it.
Yeah.
Not anymore. I loved it once, but not anymore.
Yeah. I kept my original line because when I opened the doc and I'm like, have you seen this before? I was like, yeah, one of the most impactful movies of my childhood.
Right.
And when I got to the end of the movie, I was like, maybe I won't say that. But I was like, no, that was my initial thought. I haven't seen this movie in a while. And I was like, I fucking loved this as a kid. And this is the prime reason why we do this series is like, it's a little disheartening, but it's also good to kind of wash away a false memory.
Yeah.
You know,
It's good to like learn. Like, it's not like you lose all of that.
No.
You just learn about it.
Yeah.
And then it's a new way to think about something that you used to like.
And I feel like we hit a lot of hitters on this because obviously going into watch movies, we want to watch really good movies. So we tend to at least lean. But this one was like, we liked that as a kid. We should watch that. And we watched it and I was like, oh, fuck, it sucks.
Yeah.
This was the first time we've kind of really had a shit pisser.
I will say, right after we finished watching it, the first thing you got up and you were like, dude, that was awesome.
Well, it is.
You were like, that movie rocks. And I was like,
funny.
I know, but I understand also that like a day after you watch it,
yeah, you're like,
you learn, you think about it a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, while it's on, I can agree with that like if I wasn't watching it for How Did It Age, I'd probably just like ignore the stupid shit and laugh at the parts that are still funny.
I like read some of the script today, doing research for this, and reading some of Patch's lines like off paper. I was like, Jesus.
Yeah, they had to write that down and show it to him and be like, yeah, deliver this, by the way. It's not great.
That's how it goes. This was How Did It Age. That was Dodgeball. That's Quentin Tarantino. And I'm Mike Duggan, mayor of Detroit.
By the way, if you want to know what movie we're watching next, join our Patreon. It's only $5 a month. This one, we took a 1 week off. We had some scheduling conflicts, but we will be posting a week before it comes out what movie we watched so you can watch it and then you'll understand the video more. We'll see you in the next one. Who's taking that bet in Vegas? $100,000 on the underdog of a dodgeball championship?
You ever been to the casinos in Vegas? They'd take $100,000 if I could balance a cookie on a doggy's nose.
That's a bet you could place?
Balance a cookie on that doggy's nose over there. 20 to 1.
20 to 1 to balance
20 to 1. You can't balance a cookie on that doggy's nose. They'll take bets on anything.
Cookie on a doggy. You're not speaking very clearly.
You take a 20 to 1. I was like, you can't balance a cookie on that doggy's nose.
And it's cookie on a doggy's nose, correct? Okay, I'm just making sure.
Yeah.
All right.